On this job, there are a number of things that didn't work as far as the curvature is concerned. For instance, if you look at the ridge lines, there's a ridge line and it's a very sharp one. Shells don't like that. When you look at the shells, they come down and they're sitting on points. Didn't like that. If you look at the shells he was having very large curvatures where the weights were heaviest, and it doesn't like that.
Engineers are in catch-22. How to make the sails of the Opera House light, elegant, and strong? The answer lies not just in materials, but in geometry.
A shell structure is like an egg. If you want to break an egg, you tap it, but you can actually squeeze an egg, really quite hard behind things. And because all the forces are in that double curved shape, it doesn't break.
The curves of the early designs are incomplete, leaving them vulnerable to collapse. Over a period of 3 years, nearly every geometric trick in the book is tried, tested, and failed. Elaborate structural tests planned. The shape has to allow weight and force to be distributed evenly across the building structure. The task is so big that some of the world's earliest computers are used to crunch the numbers for the first time ever in a construction project. For Utzon, the pressure is immense. Although guideline plans for the base of the building have been started, they can't be finalized without knowing what's going on top. And if a solution to the sails isn't found, then the Sydney Opera House, arguably the most groundbreaking design scheme of the 20th century, simply won't be built. In 1958, Utzon meets with key Opera House politician Joe Carl. Carl faces a political massacre at his next election, and his opponents are certain to drop the entire Opera House scheme unless construction has already begun. Utzon is faced with a dire conundrum. Start building before the plans are ready, or don't start building at all. Construction manager Malcolm Nicklin is in charge of the Opera House site as excavations begin. For a man whose life largely revolves around details, starting work on the job prematurely is anything but an easy task.
You can't start building a huge project like that until you've sat down and done some detailed designs.
The unique roof of the Opera House requires a carefully planned base on which to sit. But because engineers are still struggling with the design of the sails, Johan Utzon can't finalize plans for the rest of the building below.
All I saw were freehand sketches of the so-called sails. I thought, my gosh, how on earth do you design them and how do you build them? As far as I knew, nothing like that had ever been built before. So there was a learning curve to climb. There were new technologies to be found. And the time available just didn't seem to be enough to me.
On the 2nd of March 1959, only 2.5 years after the design was conceived, a ceremony is held to mark the official start of construction. Left with no choice, Utzon has selected what he thinks will be the lesser of two evils, and started building before his plans are ready.
The design was being developed as they were building. Now that's a disaster normally.
Late 1962, stage 1 is well underway. Already the Sydney Opera House is behind schedule and well over budget. No viable solution to the design of the shells has yet been found, and if one doesn't arrive soon, then Utzon's dream and the building itself will rapidly turn into a nightmare.
It was like the blind leading the blind. I hesitate to say that, but it was, and a fair bit of trial and error too. Really, it started somewhere between 1 and 2 years earlier than it should have.
Design engineers are finding it impossible to create delicate-looking curves that will stand their own weight, let alone the forces of nature. The design of the Sydney Opera House requires multiple sails of different-looking shape and size. But different looking doesn't necessarily have to mean different entirely. Ironically, the solution to the riddle of the Opera House sails lies not in complexity, but in simplicity, in the purest and strongest curve of them all, the sphere. Spheres are inherently strong because of their even surfaces and curvature. This allows weight and stress to be passed around the shape evenly, spreading loads and forces across the whole structure rather than specific points. Legend has it that the answer to the riddle of the sails comes from the simple story of a man peeling an orange in a work break. He realizes that by changing the angles and size of peels from the one orange, shapes can be created that look dramatically different, but aren't. Every different sail of the Opera House can be made not just from the same concept, but from the exact same sphere.
Anybody can make a complicated thing look complicated. The clever thing is to make a complicated thing look simple.
The keys to understanding the most dynamic-looking building ever made have just been found. The man with the orange, of course, is Jorn Utzon. Construction of the Sydney Opera House takes place in 3 stages. Stage 1, the base of the building, or podium. Stage 2, the sails. And Stage 3, the interiors. The so-called spherical solution allows architects and engineers to complete the podium and begin preparations for Stage 2. For Utzon, one of the greatest obstacles of his life has been overcome.
If we could build these enormous shells of small prefab elements and just have to assemble the whole thing on the side.
The sails will be a milestone in his career.
And the other thing was,
little does he know, he will never get to see them complete.
Shiny tiles, these people are having one enemy in life, it's the law of gravity.
The podium of the Sydney Opera House is made largely of concrete, moulded in position using wooden formwork. But the size and the shape of the Opera House sails makes applying this type of technique next to impossible. Like many things to do with the Sydney Opera House, the solution to this problem is both incredibly simple, yet incredibly complex to put in place. Because each sail is now the product of a sphere with exactly the same radius, their form can be broken down into a series of geometrically identical segments, or ribs. Ribs of different lengths can be joined, creating shapes that look dramatically different, but aren't.
Only really when the design changed to a spherical form that it was realized that you could then get repetition. You didn't build it as a shell, you built it as a series of ribs.
Much like Lego, the ribs themselves can then be made of smaller segments. The more segments, the longer the rib. Ribs of different lengths, making different shaped shells. The Sydney Opera House isn't just a marvel of design, it is a marvel of construction as well. Utzon's vision for the exterior of the sails is to create something that will last under the harsh Australian environment, but will also respond to the changing mood and light around it, like a mountain capped in glistening snow. Ceramic tiles are chosen for both their durability and texture. But to gain the right look, they have to be arranged in complex diagonal patterns. To do this, over 1 million ceramic tiles are laid on pre-molded plates before being placed on the sails. Pattern, texture, and color combine. Many pieces, one effect. Bit by bit, the sails of the Opera House grow. The skyline of Sydney is being changed forever. But what price for an icon? Although its past is checkered with controversy and drama, the structure itself outshines it all.
If the few things that now appear to be the greatest crisis of all time, that the place is not good enough, if some of those can be changed now, let's face it, how long are we looking for? 100 years? 150 years? There's a lot more histories to be written, I think, before that.
The Opera House represents the ingenuity of mankind and the resilience of the human spirit to triumph over impossible odds.
At that time, you could stand in the pit where the stage platform had going to be